Joining us again will be Hossam. He's actually in Cairo right now, so he'll be joining us internationally. Hossam, he's a multi-talented individual. He's a consultant, he teaches, and he's a speaker for any project management and business analysis related topics. He's also the founder of Strategic Management Experts, which is a specialized firm in consulting and training services for both corporations and the public. So now I will let Hossam speak. I will first unshare my screen. Hossam, when you are ready, please share your screen.
Sure. Thank you. Perfect. So welcome everyone. I'm glad to be with you today. Thanks to the team who made this session reality. Thanks Ed, thanks Nathan, thanks Mo, thanks a lot everyone. The reason that I'm interested in, I was interested and brought this idea to the team in the chapter is that I just recently, less than a couple of months ago, I became a PgMP. I have been a PMP, I don't remember since when, but for a very long time, and I didn't consider PgMP until recently, so I thought it might be a good idea to share my experience and the experiences that I came across during my preparation process with everyone who might be interested in seeking and gaining this credential soon. And by the way, I'm really surprised by the number of attendees. In the beginning, I thought there might be very few who are interested in this topic, especially when you know that worldwide the PgMP credential holders are less than 5,000. Compare that with, I don't remember, but multi-hundred thousand credential holders as PMPs. Of course, this is a very small number. In all over Canada, when I found myself or found my name on the directory, the second day I became certified, I found only 231 in the directory. Let's assume a few other credential holders are not in the directory. So at the end of the day, they are less than 250, I assume. So that's a very small number. And program management is a profession that over the last 20 years, I noticed that it is really needed more and more by organizations. Organizations use usually programs in order to implement the change, achieve their strategic objectives. So this is why day after day there is more need to program managers and of course certified program managers as PgMPs, and there are many other certificates, but usually the certificates that come from the PMI are the ones that are most prestigious and most wanted by many organizations, especially in North America. So that was the reason that I thought it might be a good idea to think of having this session to share the knowledge about how to get to that point, becoming a certified PgMP with everyone interested. The big question in the beginning, of course, is whether the PgMP, whether it is the right credential for you or not. So, of course, before starting, process that will take some time, that will consume some of your effort. Of course, you will need to know whether this is the right credential for you or not. From my experience and from reading from a few other credential holders, I found that there are a few factors to consider in order to come up to a decision whether this is the right credential for you or not. The first factor is your experience in program management. So many of us are, of course, I assume everyone here in the room is familiar with what project management is. But when it comes to program management, this is not usually as clear as other topics like project management, like business analysis. So in many situations, someone becomes a project manager, and the next step, they are promoted to be a program manager. But in reality, they are not doing program management. So in the first part of this session, we are going to get a very quick and clear idea about the differences between program management and the project management, so that you would know whether program management is something that you have been doing, even if you were not called or titled the program manager. And in many other situations, you are titled the program manager, but you are not doing program management. So let's see how this works. So the first factor to consider is your experience in program management and whether it is according to the type described by the PMI or in the PMI standards, and of course the number of years required to write the exam, and with the level of complexity that the PMI is looking in the candidates for the PgMP. So let's first understand what the PMI looks for in the people or the candidates that they are going to call PgMPs. From the PgMP certification handbook, the latest one in August 2020, the PgMP credential recognizes advanced experience, skill, and performance in the oversight of multiple related projects and the resources, and lastly, aligned with an organizational objective. The three key words here or key statements here that I made in bold, those are the most important ones that would tell you whether you are a project manager and sometimes project manager, or whether you are a program manager and had enough experience to write the exam or to apply at least for the exam of PgMP. Advanced, oversight, and lastly, organizational objective. When it comes to oversight, this means that as a program manager, you are not expected to perform the day-to-day project management activities, but you are expected to provide oversight, basically to direct a group of project managers who are reporting to you. And we're going to get a more in-depth idea about what type of oversight we mean here, but in the beginning, just you should be clear on this idea that we are not looking for someone, or the PMI actually, they are not looking for someone who is managing multiple projects. This person is projects manager, not program manager. They are looking for someone who provides oversight. And the other thing they are looking for in that PgMP candidate is that they have advanced experience in understanding and helping their organization achieve their organizational objectives. To make this matter a little bit clearer, here is one of the big and significant differences between being a project manager and a program manager. Being a project manager, you usually focus on the delivery of a product or service. Whether this product or service are going to be used by your own organization, or whether this product or service will be used by an external customer or end users that are externally to your organization. For example, you work on a project of developing a new software, like accounting software, or building a bridge, or setting up a new business, or maybe new medication. Those are examples of the outputs, the products, the services that come as a result of a project. And your responsibility as a project manager, your success will be measured based on whether you were able to deliver those products, services, usually, as we all know, on time, in budget, with the accepted amount of risks and agreed upon resources, those kind of normal and traditional projects. But when it comes to a program manager, usually program managers focus on the benefits or the outcomes that the organization or the business is going to achieve from having those products. So for example, to have improved productivity, to have less traffic congestion. For example, building a bridge, the focus of the project manager is to build the bridge with the level of quality needed, within time, within budget. But the focus of the program manager will be on whether that bridge was actually able to help the traffic or the users of the road to experience less traffic compared to the previous or the old state of the traffic or old of the road at this point in the past. So the benefit or the outcome from those products or services is what program managers look after. For example, extra market share, higher customer satisfaction, those are the things that program managers look after. So the first question to answer for yourself is whether in your job you focus on making sure that the delivery of a product or service happen from one project or more this one or this person is still a project manager. If your role in your organization is to look beyond that, to look on the lasting effect on the organization or its business, like improve the productivity, like extra market share, like improve the performance of the operation, less operating costs, those kind of things, higher customer satisfaction, those kind of things, those are examples of benefits or outcomes. And if you are involved in doing so, you are basically a program manager according to the PMI. So that's the first difference. In order to understand this a little bit clearer, here is the high level idea or picture about the big picture about where exactly program life cycle and its responsibilities, its duties, this function in relation to project management and the project life cycle, especially that we are all, I'm sure, familiar with project management and a typical project life cycle. So program management responsibilities, as a program manager, you would be involved in sort of three stages of activities and tasks. Pre-project activities and some other activities while your projects running, while the program projects are running, and some post-projects activities. During pre-project activities, usually your focus as a program manager will be on understanding the organization strategy, where the organization is headed, what strategic and business objectives they are trying to achieve. Another common task of a program manager is to select the right projects to run and initiate them, sometimes by themselves as program managers and sometimes by proposing that to a board and getting their approval. Once they get the approval, they assign the project managers and they follow up with their performance. They analyze the funding options and they secure the funds, whether for the entire program or for the program components, which we mean by components, the projects under the program. During the running of the projects, during the project's life cycle, your focus as a program manager is not the project's day-to-day activities or project management activities. Your focus should be on directing the project managers, providing that kind of oversight. For example, like intervening when projects have some issues or project's performance impact other projects. This is when the need for a program manager is at most. You need to intervene, you need to coordinate this kind of communication and discussion, and maybe you need to shift resources from a project to another to make the intended benefit in the best situation or in the best position to be achieved. Solve inter-projects issues and conflicts. Work on any resources related or shared resources related between matter between those projects. Ensure coordinated delivery for maximum benefit. That's usually your focus. For the last point, for example, if you have like 3-4 projects under your program, putting them in certain order might help the organization achieve benefit that's higher or lower if we run those projects in a different order. That's your responsibility as a program manager to decide on which order and whether different scenarios might benefit the organization more or less, and then recommend those proposals or decisions to the decision makers, usually the governance board. Once those projects are done, are completed, usually there is no existence of projects teams and the projects managers, but your work as a program manager will continue for post-project activities. And those include things like measuring change, like whether those outputs from the projects were able to help us as the organization or the business or the stakeholders achieve certain benefits or values. And that usually takes some time. That usually takes maybe a few weeks, a few months, sometimes a few years. And this is why programs are expected to run over sometimes many years. Ensuring smooth operation. So in many cases, projects and project teams get adjourned and the product, the software, for example, is managed and run by another team, the operation team, or the product, the machine is run by the operation team. And usually they would require some kind of support. It is your responsibility as a program manager, you and your supporting team, to provide that support for some period of time after the project's end point. And lastly, the last task here is analyzing improvement opportunities. While programs typically would have an endpoint, but they are more flexible in terms of extending those endpoints of time, compare the two projects. So if there is an opportunity to improve maybe a product or service by running a new project or a couple of projects, there is usually this appetite in the decisions maker in any organization to extend the endpoint or to postpone the endpoint of the program to include those added projects in order to achieve additional opportunities that we just learned about recently, and we didn't know about them during the beginning stages of the program. So again, just not to lose sight of what we're doing here and lose track of what we are doing here, we are just still discussing the first factor to consider when you are faced with this question: is PgMP the right credential for me? So the first factor is whether you have the right program management experience according to the PMI or not, so that you can apply for this credential. Let me ask you, everyone, do you hear any noise from around me here? Someone uses their mic to tell me, Nathan?
No, you're crystal clear right
there is
now.
no noise.
Perfect, okay. Continuing, so that was the first factor. The second factor is your personal career, and that's usually up to you. So whether you have in your mind different career path, whether you have a certain industry that you would like to join, and whether that industry is interested in this credential, PgMP, or not, whether those job requirements that you are looking for in certain organizations are really aware of PgMP, or maybe they prefer other credentials, and that will be, of course, your call to do. I remember this funny story, like maybe more than 12, 13 years ago. One of my friends got his PMP, and the second week or the following week, he had an interview for a new job. And the guy interviewed him, basically told him or asked him, do you know what PMP for me? So of course my friend responded, I don't know. And the response from the guy interviewing him was, PMP is nothing for me. So it depends. Okay, so if the industry or the organization, of course this is very rare these days, but if the organization or the industry you are looking to join or to be promoted within or to go for recognize PgMP or not, that's something that you should know about. And if they are aware of, and I can tell you, yes, day after day, more organizations and more industries are aware of the benefit from having PgMPs. So if that's the case, of course, that's another check. So yeah, that's a factor that might tell you go for PgMP. In order to make sure about that, my recommendation to you is to do some research, maybe on LinkedIn or any other platform that has job postings, and try to highlight the common requirements in terms of skills and credentials between those jobs that you are interested in. Not now, maybe after 5 years or so, you are on the track to be that maybe C-level person, and see if they are recognizing PgMP or any other credential, and then put it on your list to achieve. The third factor to consider to answer, or in answering this question, is PgMP the right credential for me? The third factor is alternative credentials or degrees. So when you get a clearer idea of your career and the sort of dream jobs that you are trying to target or will be targeting in a few years, then you will have a good idea of what they are looking for in their candidates. Maybe an alternative credential or degree would be an MBA, university program. Maybe you would decide to go for the PFMP directly, the Portfolio Management Professional, if your responsibilities were more aligned with a portfolio manager more than a program manager. So again, that will be your call. Maybe the alternative credentials will be industry specific, specific to your industry, IT, or maybe oil and gas or something else. So again, that will be your call. So this factor is not very far from the second one, but again, you need to be clear on where you are headed, manage your career as an organization, and of course, in order to manage an organization properly and successfully, start with identifying your strategic objectives. Once you are clear on that, if the three factors were checked, yes, I have the right and enough program management experience according to the PMI, and yes, it's on my personal career objectives, and yes, it is the right credential according to the research. So yeah, the next step is to know more about the PgMP as a credential, the process to achieve it, and whether there are challenges so that you can know what you are up against. The challenges I'm listing down here, they don't come only from my own experience, they come from the experience of I would say not many, but some I read about. They documented their experiences in achieving or not being able to achieve PgMP. Some of them were unable to achieve the PgMP. They didn't clear all the hurdles. So I gathered those challenges to you, not only from my own experience, but from others' experience as well. Some of them I didn't meet. I just read their experiences, documented or written here or there. And some of them I met and asked directly, and they are very few. But I guess those challenges and the knowledge about them will help you a lot if the decision is to go for the PgMP. So the first one is the challenges that you might face during the application stage. It's a little bit different from the application for PMP. And the second one is actually the very few resources to rely on during preparation. And the last challenge is to know a little bit about the exam tricks, the common ones, so that might affect your preparation process. To understand the challenges during the application stage, let's have a quick idea about the application requirements and the application process. So the application requirements will depend on your education diploma or degree. So if you have a high school diploma, you will require 48 months of project management experience in addition to 84 months of program management experience. So 4 years and 7 years of project and program management experience. If you have a 4-year degree, bachelor degree or more from a college or university, so you would need 48 and 48. You would need 4 years in both project management and the program management experience. And just recently, the PMI had this GAC accredited programs. So if you have any of these programs in your education or degrees from them, you would need less number of months, but I rarely met any of those guys. But anyway, it's good to know that you will need only, instead of 4 years and 4 years, for example, if you have a 4-year degree, you will need 3 years and 3 years, 36 months and 36 months from project and program management experience. If you are already a PMP, you will not need to document your experience in project management. So that first row, you will not need it. You will just jump directly in the application to the second step to document your experience in program management. The other thing is that the project management and the program management experience should be within the last 15 consecutive years. So we are in 2021, so that could go far to 2006. I think nobody remembers anything they do, or they did actually before that. So you have enough time to find in your career or in your experience any programs or projects that you might be interested in including in your exam application. So if you see that you meet any of these categories, then the next step is to get familiar a little bit with the process of the application. So it's a little bit different from the PMP, and this is usually one of the reasons that make many potential candidates do not consider to go forward in the path of PgMP, because it's a little bit complex. So it starts with an application like the PMP. So far, no problem. So you will open an application for 90 days, or it can be opened for up to 90 days, and you can save and come back and continue. And in that application, you will mention specific things about your projects and programs. I will mention those later. Once you meet and you complete your application, you will submit it, and that would take up to 10 days for the PMI guys to respond to you by saying, okay, your application is complete. Usually this is like an automatic step. So they would come back to you usually before 10 days, and they would tell you, okay, you are good to go for the next step. The next step is to pay. If you are a member, you would be required to pay 800 USD. If you are non-member, you would be required to pay $1,000. At this point, your application would be handed to the very different step from the PMP application process. Your application will be handed to a reviewer. And this step is called evaluation 1 or evaluation step 1, the panel review. It's not a panel, it's a panel of reviewers, but they assign your application to one of them, so one reviewer. You don't know the reviewer wouldn't know you. They would receive your application anonymously, and they would have up to 60 days to look at a specific part of your application, which is experience summary. I will give you a little bit more idea about what the experience summary is in the next few slides, but the most important point at this time to know that they're not going to look at all your application, they're going to look at the experience summary only. And that's one of the common challenges during this phase, during the application phase. You would hear, of course, we don't have statistics, but you would hear from many that their application didn't pass this point. So basically, they received a negative response or a negative opinion or decision on their application at this step. The other thing that you should know about this step is that it is not like positive or negative decision. Sometimes they would come back to you and discuss some options. Like they would say, for example, this part of your experience is not according to the PMI standards and approach. So how about you review it? We need more information about that, among other options. So the responses that you would expect include positive, which okay, you are good to go to the next step. Negative, completely negative, so your application would stop at this point. But they would tell you why. They would tell you why in details. They would come to you. They would contact you. The reviewer would contact you and tell you what's happening. And sometimes it's in between. They would tell you it is not completely positive. It's not completely negative. But we have concern about some part of your application. We need more clarification about this part of your experience. Let's hope that you would get a positive decision. So at this point, at this point, you would go to the next step, which is evaluation number 2, which is to schedule and write the exam. Up to this point, the exam is only available as center-based exam or center-based test, CBT. It is not like the PMP, you can take it from your home, like what they did with the PMP, I guess, like a year ago or so. No, you can't do that. You will have to go to a center. And there are a few of them in Vancouver and all over the world. And it will be up to the availability, but I don't think it's usually a problem. You will find some time slot and day, and you will be able to schedule your exam. And then, of course, write it, and hopefully you will pass it the first time. Just to know, you have up to 3 attempts within a year. And this is the second unclear part of this application process, where the year window starts. So in their handbook, they mention from the time of your payment. But that's not the case, or at least with me. A few weird things happened with my application, so don't take my experience in this application process very seriously. Maybe that was only my luck. But anyway, in my situation, it was 1 year from the day I received the response on my application completeness. So the countdown started even before I paid. So it's a little bit confusing, but at the end of the day, be ready once you receive the response on your completeness to pay as quick as possible, so you wouldn't have this confusion about where and when the 1 year window for your exam eligibility starts. For those who are lucky, you will get a notification of audit and you will be given 90 days. And again, this is not so much clear, and I didn't see any experience from someone who went through audit whether this affects the 1 year window or not. It's clearer in the PMP exam process, but it is not clear in the PgMP. So assume the worst case scenario, assume that this window for the audit is from your 1 year eligibility window. So try your best to send or to mail them. It is not an email, it's a mailing process. Mail them the documents they are looking for the audit within or as soon as possible. Don't wait until the end of the 90 days, and hopefully you will get the response that you are good to go to the evaluation step. A few things to know. In the past, even though they used to say the evaluation one step, the panel review step might take up to 60 days. In the past, it used to take so much less. So within 2 to 3 weeks, you would get a response. But recently, that's not the case. They take almost the 60 days in my situation, and that was not a weird situation, apart from the other things that I'm going to tell you. So in my situation, and it was a normal situation, they took 58 days. So don't be anxious. I will give you, at the end of this session, I will give you a proposed roadmap for preparation to use that time for some of your preparation steps. So be ready for that. Actually, on their website, they have this notification that they are receiving, they are experiencing a surge in the number of applicants for PgMP and PFMP, and both credentials require this panel review step. And of course, they have very limited number of reviewers. So for this reason, it's taken more than usual, but still within the 60 days window. Now to the funny things that happened to me, and I'm familiar with those things. So I don't like, when I find myself in one of these situations, I tend to smile and laugh usually. So during the application completeness review, this is usually like an automatic step for anyone. And I never, and that's a literal never, I never heard of anyone else who experienced what I'm going to tell you now. I received a response from them that, you know what, we are going to open or to reopen your application again for you to go and rewrite what you submitted. So that was like, okay, I will do it, no problem. And the funniest thing here is that it happened to me when I applied for PMP as well. So for some reason, they don't get my applications the first time. So that's okay. So basically, I opened my PMI profile and I found, even though the application yesterday was in process, today it is open again. Okay. So I went to my email and I found their email in the junk box. So okay, I know that I experienced it before. So basically, I don't know exactly what they were looking for. Maybe some punctuation, maybe spaces between paragraphs, so smaller statements or sentences. This is what I did. I didn't change anything in my experience because it is what it is. But the second time it went okay. So, okay. The other funny thing happened to me is that After I paid and my application went to evaluation review or panel review, and after 58 days waiting, I found its status back to ready to pay. I swear. So that was the weirdest. Like I didn't experience that before. So I contacted them and they, okay, we opened the case and stuff. And at this time, I didn't know if I passed the panel review or not. So I asked the guy I'm speaking with, do you have any note about that? And he told me, yes, you cleared the panel review. It's a technical issue. So I guess the lesson here is don't be anxious. Expect anything from the PMI and contact them if you have any question, and hopefully you will get the answer. But after that, everything, or other than that, everything went very smoothly. Okay. Okay. And by the way, we will have some time at the end of this session, maybe like 10 or 15 minutes for your questions. So if you have any question about any part, I will be happy to answer. So now that you are familiar with the application process and application eligibility requirements, let's get some idea about what exactly you are expected to document in your experience. I'm going to skip the part of project experience because I assume most of the interested in PgMP are already PMPs. So PMPs are exempted from the need to document their project management experience. So I'm going to just jump directly to documenting the program management experience. For each program, you are going to provide a brief about it, maybe a couple of paragraphs, 3 paragraphs, and then you will list each project, and each project will be and should be mentioned by the name, the duration from this month to this month, and the system will calculate how many months. The number of the team members were reporting to you in that project, and the budget for that project. That's not the problematic part. The usually challenging part is the summary experience. And the summary experience is after this page. So once you list a full program, with its associated projects, let's assume for 3 years, and another program for a couple of years. Once you are done with that and click next, basically you fulfilled whatever 84 months of program management or 48 months of program management. Once you fulfill that and click next, you will go to the summary experience part. This is the part that the panel review looks or actually examines, not the first part. So the first part is basically for context, for making sure you managed complex programs, not only programs that included projects, but complex programs, hopefully with multi-million-dollar budgets, with many reporting members to you. And after that, the focus will be on what they call summary experience. For the summary experience part, they are going to ask you a question. The questions are known already, but they are not relevant now, but they are going to ask you a question, and they would need to know your role regarding this part or this question in the 5 domains of program management. You will know what the 5 domains later. They are mentioned here at the bottom of this slide: strategic program management, program management life cycle, benefits management, stakeholder management, and lastly, governance. For each of them, there is a question, and there is a drop-down menu through which or from which you would select which program you would like or you would prefer to answer this question or to provide your experience about this question about here in this text box about this specific program. So if you have like program 1 and program 2, in the, for example, benefits management part, in the benefits management experience part, you might select program 2. And in the stakeholders management part, you might select program 1. It's up to you. And if you have more than that number of programs, that's up to you. For each of these domains, when you write the summary experience or the summary from your experience about managing this part of a program, it's up to you to select any of the programs that you mentioned in the first part in your application. Okay? For that reason, my recommendation to you, and the recommendations that I collected from most of the people I found like they have reasonable point of view in how they pass the PgMP exam application and the exam as well, I recommend to you to list down all your programs and their associated projects even before opening the application. So have your like draft piece of paper or notebook and list down all your programs, and under each program list down the associated projects, the dates, the brief about each of them, and draft an experience summary, because the questions are known and there are templates for that. I'm not going to like overwhelm you today by this information, but they are like only 5 questions, so they are known. Okay, so go to each question or topic they are asking you to document your experience about, and draft a summary experience from one of your programs. And it's very recommended that you go for someone who is already a PgMP to review. The hope is that you avoid or you minimize the probability or the possibility that you get a concerning response or a negative response from the panel review, especially that it takes a lot of time. It takes up to 60 days. So you don't want to waste that time, and then you get even not a negative response, but a questioning response. You need to, or you would try to pass this step the first time as much as you can. So for this reason, I really recommend that you list down your experience in programs and the associated projects, write the brief, write the summary experience for the 5 topics, the 5 domains, and decide on which project, decide on which program to include even before you open the application. And if you can, have someone review that summary experience for you. For the summary experience or the for experience summary to pass, usually it has to be very specific and as detailed as possible. So for each of these 5 topics or 5 domains, get ready to write like a letter size page at least for each one. Try to be as detailed as possible. Start with I did that, I made that decision, I led the team to do X, Y, Z. This is what they are looking for. They are looking for your role as a program management in each of these 5 domains that form the program management life cycle. Okay? Basically, they want to make sure that you are the program manager they are looking for, or according to their standards. What will help you in that is one of the recommendations that I'm going to tell you later during the roadmap that I'm going to propose to everyone. But for now, the recommendation is have your application draft even before you open the application. The other, before I forget, the other recommendation is when you start your application online, you open the application under your account in the PMI, try to do it as quick as possible, and every maybe 15 minutes or so, save. I lost some of the text that I wrote for some time. When I came to the saving point, my session was timed out for some reason. So every 10 to 15 minutes, it's recommended to save and then continue. There is no problem during the 90-day window. There is no problem to go back and continue at any point of time until you submit your application. Okay? One last thing before I forget. There are those paid services for reviewing your application or experience summary before submission, before you submit them. I don't recommend that you do that. So it's either you reach out to someone you know as a PgMP, a credential holder, someone with the experience in this exam, and you ask them to review, or you review it yourself a few times and read in the handbook the recommendations that they have about how to write your experience summary, and that will be it. Don't go for a paid service Until this is your option, this is your like decision. It's up to you, but I really don't recommend that you do that. Now, the next challenge is the lack of preparation resources. So there is not many resources like PMP exam preparation books, for example, or simulation questions, or questions banks like the ones that we are familiar with when we studied and wrote the PMP exam. You wouldn't find a lot of resources for the PgMP. But the good news is that you wouldn't need that. You wouldn't need an exam preparation book. If you have your hands on one of them and you like it, that's okay, go with it. But really, you don't need an exam preparation book. And the reason is very simple. Program management, even though it's a heavy topic, it doesn't have enough details, or it doesn't have that amount of details compared to project management. So yes, project management is full of details, more and more and more of details compared to program management. So this is why you really don't need another examination explanation book to understand the content. The content is dry, I understand, but still, if you have experience in it, you will not have a lot of problems reading the book or the resources that I'm going to mention now and understanding them. So the first and most important resource is the standard for program management, and the latest edition is the 2017 one, the fourth edition. This is the one that you should rely on, with a trick that I'm going to tell you about in a couple of minutes. The second very important resource to rely on is the exam content outlines. And the latest edition, the latest version is from 2011. Yes, they haven't reviewed it. The same exam that you take today is the same exam like someone took it in 2011. And there is no news or new announcement or any announcement that they intend to change it in the near future. So that's a very important resource. Compared to the PMP, yes, of course, there is an ECO, an exam content outline, but we usually don't know about it as PMPs. We don't rely on it. We just rely on the PM book and rely on any preparation material, but we don't know what the ECO includes. For this exam, the ECO is very important. It's a very small PDF. You need to download it from PMI, and it's very important. You need to familiarize yourself with it, and you need to know what's in it. It's a very small PDF, but it's important in addition to the program management standard, or the standard for program management. And the third resource is the PM book guide, and I intentionally included the one before the last, which is the fifth edition. You shouldn't rely on the latest version, because basically the exam is still specified according to 2011 ECO, exam content outline. So it's hard to imagine that they are going to change the questions to be aligned with the latest version of the PM book. Even though that the latest version of the PM book, it was the sixth edition. I'm sorry, I wrote fifth, but it is sixth edition. Even though that the sixth edition, of course, was issued so much later than 2011, but still it had the same structure of how the process-based, basically, content of how they described and prescribed project management. That's so much aligned with the standard for program management and the ECO. Even though it's a newer version, it doesn't matter. And it doesn't have a lot of weight for the PgMP exam. So from my and from others' experience, we would say the standard for program management would be important, like 75% for your preparation. And the ECO comes with a 15% weight. And your familiarity with the content of the PM book guide would account to maybe 10% for your preparation. Of course, those are subjective numbers, but or evaluations, but they are indicative to some extent. The reason is for you to know about the PM book, and I'm sure that will not be an issue to any one who is going to write the PgMP exam. But the reason is you need to be so clear about the differences between your role as a program manager and the project manager's role. And there is a few questions that try to trick you about that. For that reason, you need to be familiar with the content of the PM book. The other reason is that sometimes they would bring questions that include information about earned value management and scheduling, basics of scheduling, network diagrams. Those concepts are applicable to programs as they are applicable to projects, but they are not included in the program management standard. For that reason, you need to know them from the PM book. Okay, so in order, the most important resource to rely on is the standard for program management. The second very important resource is the ECO, the exam content outline. And the last resource is the PM book guide, which is important as well, unless you already know it. Now, to get an idea about what's included in the ECO, the exam content outline, it includes basically how the exam is formed, the weight for each domain of program management in terms of questions. So the first domain, strategic program management, comes with 15% of the questions. The second domain, program life cycle, comes with 44% of the questions. And the third one, benefits management, 11%, stakeholder management, 14%, and governance, 14%. The standard for program management is basically structured in the same direction. So it includes other chapters, but at least it includes 5 chapters. Each covers one of these domains. Chapter 3 for program strategy alignment, Chapter 7 for program lifecycle management, Chapter 4 for benefits management, 5 for stakeholder engagement, and Chapter 6 for program governance. The trick will be in this part. So when it comes to this second part here, guys, the program lifecycle, that comes with the biggest part of the questions, 44% of the questions. Those are broken down into 5 areas in the exam content outline from 2011. Initiating, planning, executing, controlling, closing. This is how they used to describe a program life cycle at that time. According to the latest standards, they are not describing the program life cycle this way. They are describing it in 3 phases only: definition, delivery, closure. There is some kind of alignment. So definition includes initiating and planning, delivery includes executing and controlling, and lastly, closure is closing. My recommendation to you is not to get confused when you read from the standard for program management and the exam content outline and you see this kind of disconnect or this like no alignment here. Don't get confused. Focus on the concepts, whether they belong to definition or they belong to planning or executing, it doesn't matter. Focus on your role as a program manager. And what might be assuring is that you would know that most of the questions in the exam are situational questions. So it doesn't matter that much if you read this part under the topic of delivery phase or under the topic of controlling phase. It doesn't make a big difference. It's just an important piece of knowledge to know so that you don't get surprised when you see this kind of disconnect between the ECO and the latest version of the program standard. And lastly, be familiar with the different terms, like whether it is this or that, whether they call it, for example, whether they call it a program mandate or a program project, program charter, it doesn't matter. So it's the document that initiates a program or that gives the decision to start a program. So I guess this will tell you, again, just quick idea about, the resources that you should rely on. And their importance. Yo, come on. And the reason, I just want to stop here at the end of this slide to tell you that I didn't mention any questions bank, if anyone is asking. And that's true. There are a few reasons for that. The available questions banks in the markets are not many. And some of them from experience are terrible. They are not similar at all to the real exam. So it's not worth wasting your time in practicing a lot of questions. I'm going to cover this part, but for anyone is like questioning this slide of resourcing or having this question, yes, intentionally I didn't mention any question bank or practicing questions at all because it is not that much important for this exam. Additional resources, if you have more time and if you are of this type who loves reading, read the Benefits Realization Management. It's a practice guide from the PMI. Benefits Realization Management is a core function in program management. It's basically why programs exist. So it might give you a good and better idea about your role as a program manager. And practice exam-like questions from any source that you can have your hands on. But what I would tell you, my recommendations is that you should know that some of the sources available in the market are too wordy compared to the real exam. So it's like, okay, we have the highest in terms of difficulty questions, and they think that they should proud of that. Actually, no, that's confusing and like it makes people confused and it makes them question their like level of confidence. And some of them have questions that are too short. So I would tell you, at least from my experience, because we don't know any other person experience. Of course, I can't tell you and I don't remember any of the exam questions, but most of the exam questions were between 3 to 5 lines. So it's not like too much wordy or too short. But in the exam questions, I found like exam banks or question banks. I found one of them, which is the one that I mentioned here, Ginger Levine's or Levine's. This one includes the questions. Each of them is more than half a page. That's bad. Avoid this questions bank as much as you can. Even if you have a free like copy of it, don't waste your time. It's going to confuse you more than prepare you. And when you practice those questions, try to make your focus on just to feel confident, like to, yeah, I know those topics. I know the answer to those questions, regardless of whether they are too much difficult or too easy. It is not the issue. And the surprise to many is that the exam questions are not that tricky. They are not like the PMP exam questions, the real exam questions I mean here. They are not that tricky. They examine whether you know the concepts, whether you know what to do in certain situation or not. They don't try to trick you that much. And some of the answers are very clear that you are not going to and you shouldn't actually select. Like, for example, to finger point the mistake to another stakeholder. Of course not. This is not a common theme in the PMI or in any good management practice. So my point is, if you read and if you prepare yourself well with those resources that I mentioned, and if you practice questions from here and there just to get a sense of how questions would be, not to just or not to prepare yourself to the point that yes, I'm very confident or I know what types of questions I'm going to get. So that might be fine. Just get a sense of how questions or what the topics that the questions are asking. That's the whole point. The other point and the other objective from practicing those questions is to get a sense of the timing, or how quick you are, like how many questions you can answer in a specific period of time. So that's the most important part. I heard conflicting reports here. So I heard a few, because there is not too many that I know as PgMPs. There's not too many all over the world anyway. So from their experiences, the documented one and the ones that they asked, some of them said the time was enough for the exam, and some of them said it was not enough at all. So I hear the conflicting reports. My experience was like it was okay. Like I had like 15, 20 minutes at the end. Once I'm done with all the questions, that gave me the opportunity to go over a few that I was trying to review again, and I did that. So, but still, some people passed the exam already, but they didn't have enough time to complete the exam. So that gives you an indication on it might be a different scenario for each one. So the most important objective, or the second most important objective from practicing questions, is to get a sense of the exam time and get a sense of the speed that you can have in answering those questions in the real life exam. Don't practice hundreds of questions. You will not find hundreds in the market. And my fear is that if you relied on a source that's not so much reliable, and we don't have those like verified resources like the PMP, my fear is that you might get, or you might form a mindset that's not exactly the mindset that you need to have for the exam. So what I can say is practice a few, like let's say 100, 200, something like that, not more than that, just to get a sense of the exam timing and to just feel confident that you are familiar with the topics that should be covered and are covered in the exam. Avoid this one that I mentioned the name here. It's not good at all. There are a few others like Lathy. Lathy is good. There is another one from Simply Learn that's good as well. But again, don't try, for example, to practice them all and take the 2 free exams in the package. It's not that important. If you feel confident that you know the topics, if you answered maybe 100, 150 questions and you found yourself okay, you can move on and go and write the exam, and most likely you will pass it. Some common themes from the exam that you will find usually in the exam questions. The first one, understanding the organization strategy and business objectives. That's a very important theme. So your role as a program manager is to like align the program and its components, its the projects, to the organization strategy and business objectives. And that will require from you to understand the overall picture, the big picture in the organization and where this organization is headed. Another common theme is managing conflicts, especially the resources ones, when it involves 2 or more projects in your program. So if there is an issue, if there is a disagreement between 2 of your project managers on a resource, this is when you need to intervene. Intervene by doing what? That will be up to the available answers and the real situation, the real question situation. But this is when you need to intervene. So at least in a similar question, you can eliminate an answer that suggests that the 2 project managers can agree on with each other and whatever they agree on. Someone opened their mic. Okay, there was an echo. The third common theme here is who should do what. And that's usually mentioned in the stakeholder domain part and the governance part, especially the governance part. Like who makes this decision, whether it is the board, whether it is the sponsor, whether it is the program manager, the project manager. You need to be clear on the roles and responsibilities of each of those individuals or boards or committees, because many of the questions in the exam are about this part. The fourth common theme is about managing change on multiple program components. So when there is, for example, a change in the organization strategic objectives, how is this going to affect your program components? What decisions you should do, what actions you should make? Those are typical questions in the exam. The last common theme is which document is useful in which situation. Like, for example, the program roadmap, the program charter, the stakeholder list, the stakeholder map. So which of them is going to help you in which scenario? Which of them includes which part that you are looking for in which scenario? You need to be clear on that. And one surprise that I might tell you about the book, The Standard for Program Management, is that, of course, it is not, in terms of size, it is not similar to the PIM book, so it is much smaller. And the second thing, which might be a good or somehow good like news, is that it includes a lot of redundancy. So you will find the information repeated again and again and again. Sometimes this becomes confusing, especially during the first reading, but after the first reading, you would find, okay, I know that, I did it somewhere. So it's not like it's a big book that you need to read and know each word in it. It's not that much big as it seems to be. And the last thing here is a proposed roadmap for the preparation. I have to acknowledge that studying is a very personal matter. And this is only a proposed roadmap, a proposed preparation process. But it's up to you to use it, to customize it to your own style, to not use it at all. It's up to you. The first part is to get familiar with the exam and the credential and the requirements, those kind of things. That's very important. So start by reading the handbook. There is a very small PDF called the PgMP handbook. Download it, read it. That's the entry point to anything else. Even though it doesn't include information about the exam, but it includes very useful information about the process. So you need to be familiar with that in the beginning. The second stage includes the quick reading step and the application step. And there is a reason for combining them together here. So the quick reading step includes reading the standard for program management. I don't know why I made this M capital and there is a point there, but anyway. So the standard for program management and the PgMP exam content outlines or the ECO. So you need to read them. Quick reading, skimming, just like you read maybe a newspaper. If you find, for example, something that you don't fully understand, just highlight it, take a note. Don't stop at it. If you find something that looks like contradicting with another part, again, take a note. Don't confuse yourself at this step. And then it includes, this stage, it includes as well starting your application by drafting your experience, and then by opening the online application, revise your draft information, and then fill out the online application and submit. The good news that I didn't mention earlier is that the current version of the application is a simplified version. The process is the same since, I don't remember, since 2013. Before 2013 or 2014, they used to have extra steps. So you would need at that time to include reference for them to, I don't remember, to fill out some form or to report on your performance, something like that. They removed that part of the requirements since 2013. If I still remember 2013, 2014, about that, around that time. And like a year ago, they simplified the process. So the number of pages, the information they are looking for each project and program is much less than before. One of the benefits from the quick reading is that if you start drafting your experience while you do it, you will learn the terms that the standard and the ECO are using, and you would revise your drafted experience according to those terms and to the vocabulary used in the standard and the ECO. So it should be, or that will enhance basically the chances that your application will pass the completeness and the panel review steps smoothly. Okay. Once you are done with this stage and you submitted your application, don't wait. Start with a thorough reading. So whether you had notes from the quick reading, focus on them this time, or whether you don't, read every single word. And the benefit from having a quick reading step before the thorough reading is that the thorough reading will be faster. If you started with the thorough reading step, that will be very difficult. It will take longer and longer, but still, it's up to you. And then, of course, the hope is that, and practice questions if you have your hands on any of those question banks or simulators. The hope is that during your thorough reading, you will get notified to pay, so the completeness check will pass, and you will pay, and your application will go to the panel review, and hopefully the 2 months or hopefully less from the panel review will pass with a positive decision on your application. So by the time you hear from the panel review, you will be either already done with the thorough reading or very close to do it. So you will, at this point, just schedule and pass the exam. I think that's everything. So that was a proposed roadmap, but at the end of the day, it's up to you, as I mentioned before. So at this point, I would like to thank everyone, and back to you, Nathan. If anyone has any question, I will be glad to answer them.
Thank you very much, Hossam. Thank you very much. And there are a couple of questions that we had earlier in the session. So Wendy has asked if what is the evaluator looking for as PgMP experience, and do you have to be directly managing PMs?
So first, let me apologize that I didn't keep an eye on the chat box because of an interface issue, let's call it that way. So I wasn't able to see the chat box at the same time I'm sharing. So what is the evaluator looking for as PgMP experience? They are looking to make sure that you were a program manager according to the PMI duties and responsibilities of a program manager. So basically you had experience in the 5 domains and list of tasks under each domain. That's the first part they are looking for. The second part is that you manage the complex programs. It's not like only programs, but complex programs. So for example, let me give you a couple of examples about programs. So a program that lasted maybe 4 months that included 2 projects, not likely to pass. I'm not saying it is not going to pass, but not likely to pass. They are looking for those complex programs in the form that they included many team members, they included many stakeholders, they included considerable amount of budget, and hopefully more than 2 or 3 projects. So that's what they are looking for. And your experience summary in each of the 5 domains should show that. For example, sometimes in our organizations, we get assigned as program managers, like someone, the big boss will call me and tell me, you're assigned a program manager for this program. I'm not saying you are not a program manager, but they are looking for something beyond that, like you were involved in writing the governance structure of the program. Maybe not in all your programs. One program you did that, the others you didn't. Okay, so they are looking for this kind of complex experience. To not make it a little bit more challenging, I'm going to just refer to the proposed roadmap. This is the benefit from going through the quick reading in the beginning, so that you would get familiar with what exactly they are looking for and draft your application accordingly. Do you have to be directly managing PMs? Yes, you have to be directly managing PMs. What are the other scenarios? If you are managing maybe associate program managers, so yeah. Sub-program managers, yeah, but you shouldn't be managing the project the project team members. This is not what they are looking for. So from Simon, as an owner's representative, I deliver and delegate a program of projects from hiring consultant to complete business case, design packages, and procure GC to complete construction. Which credential is recommended? I'm Simon, I'm sorry, I'm really reluctant to tell anyone which credential is better for them. In order to do that, I should know you, and I will be happy to do that. So if interested, get in touch with me by email. We can, and this is for everyone. I do that. So for anyone interested, if I can be of any assistance, please reach out to me. We can arrange maybe a Zoom call or something, so that we can have a discussion on whether this or that path or credential is better for you. But in general, like I recommended in the beginning of this presentation, one of the ways to do that, to know whether this credential is for you or not, or another credential, is to look for those jobs that you really look for, or maybe move for in the next few years, and look for what they are asking for. Are they asking for PgMP or EMBA? They would know more. Those industries and teams and organizations would know more than myself to say whether this is more fitting to you or not. But if you would like to have a discussion about that, I would be happy to do it. From Jan or Jan, I'm not sure. Do you need to have managed multiple programs, or would one program over a 4+ year period meet requirements? More than required. You don't need to have in your experience more than one program. It doesn't matter whether it was only one or two or five. It doesn't matter. What only matters is the duration. So if you are referring to the fact that you have a 4-year degree or more, so yeah, you would need 4 years of experience in program management. One program would suffice. How much time should I budget to cover the material in the standard and the ECO? Again, this is difficult to say, Hayden. It depends on many factors, your dedication, the time allocation. Everybody has their own reading and studying style. For example, I just read and take a few notes. My wife can't do that. My wife has to fill the entire room walls with papers and diagrams. That's her style. So it's different from a person to another. But what I would say is it would take you half the time that you read the PM book, with, or assuming that you had, or that you have, or going to have the same amount of time and dedication to read the standard and ECO. So it wouldn't take you more than half the time that you needed for reading the PM book if you read it for, when you read it for the PMP. Okay. From Hayden, how does this credential relate to the Managing Successful Programs credential Axelos? That's completely different. So Axelos standards, like Prince, managing projects with Prince, and MSP, managing successful programs, are basically process and template based. And they work in certain assumptions. This is why they, like Prince, it's projects in controlled environment. So it is not like better or worse. If you know program management from here or there, you would understand the other one. But the way they are structured, they are completely different, or not completely, they are so much different. Okay? I'm just going to assume now, if your question is about, okay, I'm familiar with that other book, for example, or credential, would it take me less to read, or can I rely on my information from Axelos to just write the PgMP exam? No, you will need to basically read and prepare yourself for it. Okay, I don't see any other questions. Any other question, anyone? What's the expected budget? 1 million or more to not expected that much. So it shouldn't be like a few thousands, but maybe a couple of 100,000 might be okay. But it shouldn't be like $10,000 or $20,000. This is not usually a program. A program should be complex by definition. What should be typical team size? Again, there is no typical, but when I mentioned, for example, they are looking for those programs that you had many team members reporting to you, I meant that if you had two programs that you are deciding between them whether to include this one or that one in your application, include the one that's more complex. And in general, they are not looking for 3 or 4 or 5 team members, not necessarily 20, but 7 or 8. That makes it a big team. Those are not fixed numbers, okay? I'm just giving you an example. Regarding benefits, what is the tangible deliverables that I can produce? Not necessarily tangible. When it comes to benefits, it might be tangible or intangible. Acknowledgement from the sponsor? No, acknowledgement is an indication of acceptance, sign off, but not a benefit in itself. So benefits like, for example, tangible benefits, like, for example, increase in revenue or profit. Intangible, like increase the productivity that you can measure by whatever industry metric you have. But so those are examples of benefits, but not the acknowledgement of the sponsor. That's not enough. That's only an indication of sign-off or completion. Okay, I hope I was able to answer those questions.
Yes. Yeah, thanks, Hossam, for answering those questions and just overall demystifying the PgMP certification.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Hossam, for delivering this abroad and within this timing. This is so valuable to dedicate your time and your effort with us. Thank you very much.